Laura, thank you so much for being here. I am honestly having kind of a meta moment right now because it is really wild that 10 years ago, nearly about 10 years ago, we were connecting digitally. I was sitting at Noy House working with Julie Gilhart, shout out Julie, talking about press and projects. And here we are in on parallel paths, but in totally different worlds. And I know this community will resonate so much with your journey and that pivot. So thank you so much for your time and your energy and for being here.
It's an honor and a pleasure. And yes, it's funny. Many of our fellow fashion refugees have found our ways into the wellness world. I don't think that's a mistake, right? That it makes a lot of
No,
sense.
it makes a lot of sense. A lot of trauma in fashion, and we're all just on that healing journey.
Yes.
100%. Well, I typically start off these conversations by you speaking to a catalytic moment, perhaps an aha moment that really informed the work that you put out into the world today with AllSwell.
So what I usually tell people, and is true, is that I went to surf one morning in Montauk and I got skunked. There were no waves. And I always have a notebook in my beach bag because I'm an inveterate journaler and always have been. It was a beautiful day. So I spread out my towel and started journaling. And I looked around and I said, swell or no swell, all's well. And that was the genesis of the brand. And that is true. But the other story that is also true that I don't necessarily tell because it isn't something that a lot of people will understand, but I know you will, and I think your listeners really will too, is that at the time I was running a very arguably successful marketing communications agency. I had my dream clients. I was bi-coastal. I had a beautiful group of people that were working for me. And arguably, it looked great from the outside. But on the inside, I was incredibly burnt out and needed a creative outlet so badly where I didn't have client approval. And all my creativity was used in the service of others. And I loved it. I loved helping people make their dreams come true. But the impetus for Allswell was also because there was something inside of me that needed an outlet. And I needed to create something that was just my own. So both stories are true, but I think that idea of burnout and how creative outlets can serve so beautifully as an antidote for that. Now, to be clear, it was never meant to have any revenue associated with it. It was simply something that I was doing as a passion project. I wasn't doing it for greater productivity or to explore what other careers I could have. I was just doing it because I was called to do it. And I wanted to see what was over the fence. I wanted to see what was over there.
So, when did you actually start journaling? Have you always been a journaler, or did it come about because of your own personal healing journey, or was it actually through the building of your marketing and your PR company that you just found it? Like, how long have you been journaling?
I started journaling when I was a single digit, when I was 7 or 8, when a family friend
Wow.
gave me a journal, and I haven't stopped since.
Wow. Okay. That's incredible. So, talk about, because I can actually see that through your work, because when working one on one with you, you really allowed me to, or you reframed journaling as, this artistic mischief messiness, this outlet for really for us to color outside the lines, if you will. Talk about just the balance of structure and spontaneity and how in your journaling practice and the importance of quote unquote like coloring outside of the lines and how that informs your work.
So the physical journals, which was the initial place that I started, also it was just meant to be products. The workshops came later, but physically the journals have both a right and a draw side, and the right side has lines, and the draw side does not.
Love it.
So in terms of structured and unstructured, what that does is that you can use the draw side for literally drawing, and sometimes I do, but I tend to use the right side for more structured thought, and I use the draw side for more exploratory thinking and more room to play and be messy and not have to stay inside the lines. So it's actually the physical journal is actually a representation of two of the directions that I help people with in terms of utilizing their journaling practice. Sometimes you do want to have structure, and you want to have prompts, and you want to have a something that's a more prescriptive approach. And I've got that for you. And we can talk about what some of those things might be. And then there are also more of like an ethos and a direction where I'm bringing people to the page and letting them make a mess and play, and not necessarily doing it for the sake of checking off an item on their self-care to-do list, but because we need that energy in our lives so very badly.
100%. You told me yesterday to throw all my tools, all my exercises kind of out the window and just show up to the page and just see what comes up. And you referenced Julia Cameron, and I admire her work, and just allowing ourselves to just like clear everything out and create the space to just like see what comes up, because that's really where the magic happens. And you mentioned some of your prompts and exercises, and I would love for you to highlight a few of your personal favorite, maybe journaling prompts or exercises that you find particularly effective with the coaching clients that you work with.
Well, every coaching client is different, and every workshop is different. Some of my kind of greatest hits, I'll put it that way, some of my greatest hit prompts for somebody who's a journaling newbie and they need a structure to follow. Julia Cameron, who I mentioned, and we both have tremendous respect for, she has what's called morning pages, where you write 3 full pages every single morning before you do anything else. And there's no direction and there's no prompt. And I think that's wonderful. However, that book was written in the early 90s.
Right.
And neurologically speaking, our brains are simply different now because of the amount of incoming information and prompts that we receive from the moment we look at these brilliant little computers that we hold in our hands. So I'm trying to meet people more where they are and set people up for success, that they get that sense of like that dopamine pellet from the act of journaling, rather than feeling like it's something that they've failed at. And one of the approaches that I have in order to help them do that is what I call 4 by 4 by 4. I suggest journaling for 4 minutes at a time, not even 5 minutes, 4 minutes. Even the busiest people I know have 4 minutes, and try to do it 4 days a week, not even every day. I'm not asking you to do it every day, and try to stick with it for 4 weeks. And this isn't Whole30. You don't have to start over again. If you fall off the wagon, you can just get back on and keep going. Bring your attention back to the practice. But the idea here is that 4 by 4 by 4 is a gentle place for you to meet a journaling practice. And setting you up for success means that you're going to feel better about it. You're more likely going to have positive associations with it. And you probably won't stop at 4 minutes most days. You're probably going to keep rolling right through it. So it's about letting your journaling practice be something that is a refuge and a source of joy rather than a place of consternation. And some people associate journaling with complaining on the page, and they don't want that. They want something that feels more joyful, more accessible, and we can do all of that with them through the various prompts that I have.
100%. And you mentioned something at the very beginning about how our brains have changed, and how Julia Cameron's process, although it's so profound, it is antiquated, because we are matched and met with so many different screens and just so many different devices throughout our day to day. Like, what is the what are some scientific like benefits of journaling? Like, can you take us through like what is going on in our brain when we are journaling or when we are doing a vision dump, or if that's different from like a gratitude journaling practice? Like, I'm so curious.
Well, the scientifically proven benefits of journaling are remarkably broad. And again, since I'm a lifelong journaler and I've felt and seen the benefits in my life, I wasn't surprised necessarily when I dug into the considerable body of research that exists around the act of journaling. And it is mentally good for you. It is emotionally good for you. And those are two different things. And it is physiologically beneficial. So that physiological piece, I think, is part of where I can work with people in more of like a corporate environment, and they go,
Yes.
oh, okay, like I get it. That's significant enough for me to prioritize this practice, because it does everything from strengthen your T lymphocytes, which is essentially the backbone of your immune system. It helps speed wound healing. It helps curb asthma, which is something that's near and dear to my lungs and my heart. It does all of these things and more. And it's simply through the act of expressing yourself on the page. So yes, it can also reduce PTSD when used in the right therapeutic setting. It can boost your mood. It can rewire your brain so that you are literally a happier person, no drugs. And all of this is available to you by utilizing the near infinite tools of pen and paper.
Yeah, I feel like it's so simple, but so powerful. And like I mentioned yesterday, like there's no need to run off and do all these crazy esoteric ceremonies in order to heal. Like my work really is surrounded in rooting in the magic in the mundane and the healing power in the mundane, a walk outside, like finding the awe and wonder that is imbued within each and everything around us. And a lot of that for me has been found on the page because, our body is filled with so much wisdom, lifetimes of wisdom. Our cells hold so many stories. We just don't allow them to breathe and be. And I feel like journaling for me personally has been an outlet where I'm able to delve deeper into my subconscious. Probably it's second to meditation to me, but it's so.
I see journaling and meditation, they go together sort of like brushing and flossing. And they're beautiful components. I will say some people come to me and they are not meditators. And for them, often mindful writing becomes their form of meditation. I love so much your perspective around resacreding things, and this idea of being able to bring your awareness back into your body and into the room and into your quotidian day to day is profoundly beautiful. And many of the journaling activities that I utilize to start my workshops, regardless of what kind of group it may be, whether it's a VC firm or a group of wounded veterans. It's all about coming into the present moment and being embodied. And one of the journaling prompts that I recommend people try is what I call 5 senses. And it is simply about witnessing, noticing, what are you seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and feeling in that moment. Take a look around. And then I ask people to use layers. So hear and then hear beyond the hearing, because with each sense, there's so much available to us. And then just write it down. And sometimes people tell me like, oh, but like I thought it slows you down. Maybe that's a good thing. So it's this idea of being able to take your awareness, be able to even embody your body, be where you are, and use the kinetic motor action and moving your hand across the page to slow yourself down.
Embodied journaling. Like
Yes.
that is it, there's a very big difference between, doing a gratitude journaling practice when you're, ticking off, okay. And I find myself in this space right now. I am guilty of this right now and this morning. And we talked about this yesterday, how I need to shake up my routine to kind of like, okay, get me more in like an embodied state. Like, where am I right now? Because that's a different person, a very different person than 6 months ago. My energy is very different. So it's like when you're just ticking off, okay, what is my word of the day, my gratitudes and everything? It's like you're not fully present in it,
So
And
I'm sorry, I totally didn't mean to
no,
interrupt you. I
oh,
get
go for
excited because hearing you talk about your gratitude practice and then also wanting to be embodied, we can wed those together for you.
it. Mm-hmm.
So bringing five senses into your gratitude practice. So this is also a way to keep it fresh, to keep it from getting stale, using the lens of five senses. What sights, tastes, sounds, textures, etc. are you grateful for?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to scan your life for those things. You're firing up your imagination. You're going beyond the usual suspects, because often people tell me that they find gratitude journaling can get quite repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And you're pulling in more of an embodied sensation while still boosting all that great serotonin that you get from a gratitude practice.
I love that. One of the favorite practices that I try to do myself and incorporate, but also teach in workshops as well, especially with corporate partners, is connecting with the five senses while you're like just waking up. Because everyone's like, I don't have time to journal. I don't have time to meditate. It's like you can actually be doing these practices anywhere and everywhere. It's like before you get out of your bed, like, well, how did the sheets feel? What does the smell like? Like really tuning into those senses and dropping your body into that parasympathetic state can make
Yes.
all the difference. And you can do that right here, right? Like what are the engravings look like in your desk that really drop you into a state of focus? And this is, I talked to you a little bit about the science of awe and wonder and how it's really fascinating to me, and how it actually, focusing on the five senses is one of the ways to drop into a state of awe and wonder in your everyday, and it activates your pineal gland. And that's like, I mean, that's like the most healing, like juiciest feeling of all. That's like when you're doing the ujjayi breathing in yoga. That's that feeling for those of you that don't know about like the pineal gland. Getting nerdy right now, but we're talking a lot about environment, and I'm curious. You teach not just about journaling, but about creativity as a whole. What role do you believe your environment plays in your creativity? Do you switch up your environment all the
Mm.
time, or like, are there different environments that can foster greater creativity?
It's one of the things that I invite people to do as they are exploring their journaling practice. I suggest mix it up. See how environment plays a role and how it affects your creative output, because you will probably journal differently in bed than you do at night, than you
Mm-hmm.
will in the morning sitting at your kitchen table. Similarly, you will probably journal differently when you're on the subway versus when you're looking at the Grand Canyon. So the
Mm-hmm.
idea that like take your practice, shake it up, bring it out to a park bench, see where it can go. Go to the skate park, whatever. But the point
Mm-hmm.
is that it's really remarkable to have a new environment, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be journaling about the environment. Although
Right.
certainly something as awe-inspiring as a beautiful natural wonder will very likely imbue your topic. But it really is a wonderful thing to witness how environment plays a role in supporting your creative output
Mm-hmm.
and being able to just be in dialogue with that. It's not good or bad. It's just different. And
Mm-hmm.
there's sometimes where people are like, that didn't make a difference. Cool. Try something else. It's not about doing it right or wrong. And there are so many things in our lives that, like, right now, I feel like we're supposed to be amazing at everything we do. And that's one of the reasons why people have all these hangups about journaling. You can bring that novice brain to play here. There's no third party reader. There is no external critic. If there's a critic that shows up, guess what? It's the critic from within. Invite them in, have that conversation with them and say, thank you very much. You don't get to be the MC of this party. Appreciate your role here, but you can have a seat. But the point is that we're so hungry for some room to just have a creative output without it being tied to productivity. Now, the secret and the sauce here is that it will make you a more productive person, but that's not the reason to do it. And if you're bringing that lens of bro biohacking productivity to it, I'd rather have you do it than not. But man, are you missing out on all that nectar that waits for you.
Right. It's like really just rooting in that simplicity and that play again, like going out with no agenda. I recently had an interview with Alexandra Roxo, who's a mentor teacher about like sacred sexuality. And she has these like surrender Saturdays. And she talks about like, yeah, there's like nothing on, my agenda, which sounds like, well, like obviously it's the weekend, but I don't know, for entrepreneurs and for New Yorkers and a lot of my friends were like, packing our days with like, okay, I'm going to work in the morning, then I'm going to go to Pilates, and then I'm going to do all these things. But it's like, this is not where the magic happens. It happens in the spontaneity. It happens in the artistry of just living and breathing our lives. Like we forget to just live our lives. And it sounds so simple again, but it's comical. It's comical, but it's also very profound.
And I think also as New Yorkers, entrepreneurs, all of it, like there's this, we're always catching up.
Right.
We're always playing catch up. And I certainly feel many times that I am. And we've talked about this, right? That I don't want to be perceived as like somebody who has all the answers. I'm a peer. and I've done a lot of this, and I've done the pearl diving to bring the research forward, and I can bring you to the page. But one of the things that I love most about journaling is that the wisdom that shows up comes from the individual, not from me.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I mean, we're all just vessels to something greater, right? But to circle back on just the intersection of creativity and quote unquote success, I would love for you to share some of the, expansive, awe-inspiring stories that you maybe have seen throughout your coaching or throughout your workshops. I think in particularly for maybe in the corporate setting, because I think a lot of people don't realize like how beneficial it can be and how can it integrate sustainably into your professional life.
So I love working with all different kinds of groups, but some of my favorite experiences are walking into rooms full of people with their arms crossed because they didn't choose the experience. It got chosen for them. And that for me is like, oh yeah, bring it on, bring it on, bring it on. And there was one particular experience where I was doing a workshop for 50 data analysts. Ooh. And most of them were men, and many of whom English was not their first language. And it was really incredible how this work is so simple and yet profound. It's my job to find out where the cultural levers are, how can I, meeting people where they are. But then once they do it, the seed cracks open, to quote Hafez. So I'm sitting here witnessing this group empathy that's taking place and these breakthroughs that are happening. And I'm not naming them as such. Men are putting up their hands, sharing about their experience, and they are saying, I just had a breakthrough. So this idea that the work is so transformative that even in an environment that's as potentially hostile as that, it still works. And again, it's not, this isn't false modesty. It's really, I'm a skilled, after 11 years of doing this, I'm a skilled practitioner. I'm a skilled facilitator. But it really isn't about that. There I am helping them find the permission to give themselves the space to express themselves and giving them different ways of utilizing their journal, walking them through that, and then off they go. And even in a corporate environment, it's remarkable to witness. Now, people say to me, I'm not a creative. I'm not a creative person. Every single person on this planet is a creative being. And I'm not saying everybody's an artist, right? Like not everybody's Michelangelo. That's a different animal in my estimation. However, we are all creative people, and being able to connect with that innate creativity brings so much into your life and into your career. So being a more creative person is going to make you a more innovative problem solver. It's going to make you a better manager, a better colleague, a more empathetic colleague. And it's going to provide you with the ability to lift up and have a look around, as I say, above the tree line. Because when we're so focused on the day-to-day and those tasks, those to-do lists that never end, we don't have the chance to gain additional perspective. And that's waiting for you on the page through structured journaling, which is one of the things that I help people with.
So that's more, talk to me a little bit more about ways to get unstuck then. Like structured journaling is you providing prompts, or you providing a series of prompts.
Yes.
What are other ways to, for beginners out there to help get unstuck? Because sometimes showing up, I'm not intimidated by the page. I won't say I was, I feel like when I was healing through trauma and through cancer, I was really scared to write and show up to the page. But yeah,
Yes.
how does one even like begin to massage, their journaling skills? Like how can we, or not even journaling, how can we get unstuck?
Creativity writ large. Yeah. So I touched on it a little bit earlier, this idea of the critical voice. And Adam Phillips, who's a neuropsychologist out of the UK, talks a little bit about critical voice. And he says that if you met this person, if the critical voice were embodied, if you met this person, you would think like, what happened to them? And you'd be right, because a critical voice is made out of trauma, and it can be capital T trauma and lower key trauma. But the idea is if we met them at a cocktail party, we'd be like, okay, and try to get away from them as fast as possible, right? Because they're not a very pleasant person to interact with.
Right.
And once you start to understand that, you can have more sympathy for that critical voice, because all they're looking to do is to protect you from what they consider to be errors in judgment. They're trying to keep you safe. That critical voice is trying to keep you safe. However, it's made up of trauma. So it isn't necessarily playing by accurate rules. And when you understand that every single person has one, it's easier to understand that it's just part and parcel of being a human. And if you can have the metacognition to recognize it and then other it. So I say that my critical voice, just like my anxiety, like I'm not trying to banish either, it would be fruitless. But I don't want them to be the MC. I give them a seat at the table. I thank them. Because sometimes like they give me good information, and sometimes they're just keeping me from creativity and play. So if you can give yourself that awareness and whatever's coming up for you, oh, I can't do this. I'm no good at this. I've never done this. Other people are better at it. People are going to laugh at me. Someone's going to think I'm silly. Whatever those things are. And you can understand that all of that is part of a critical voice that is trying to protect you, but all it's doing is keeping you from joy. So you can say, thanks, talk to you later. And then give yourself the permission to show up and see what's there.
I always check in and say, is this the truth, or is this a story that I'm telling myself? And I think that's a Brene Brown actually tool that I've been using for many, many years. But I love the visual of the dinner party, because it's not like those people are going to walk out the door forever. It's like, no, you have to find like honor and compassion for these stories, these traumas. You know, they're always going to be within you. They're a part of you, and not in like a toxic way. It's like, it's how can you find, you know, sometimes I think people get triggered. It's like, how can you find gratitude for your cancer journey and everything? And I'm like, you know, sometimes, you know, I that's hard for me to really wrestle with, but like I can find meaning. I can find meaning in it. I can find compassion for that girl. Gratitude, I don't know. Gratitude for the enlightenment afterwards, maybe, or like the lessons learned afterwards. But on
Mhm.
that note, actually, I'm curious because we've been on a similar health journey, healing journey. Did you use journaling throughout your healing process with breast cancer? Was that a part of, you know, your toolkit, and how so?
Very little.
Really?
It was, I
Yeah.
thought relative to my usual journaling practice, which is twice a day. So during that period of time, during like the really intense crux of my dose dense chemotherapy, I thought this was going to be like my quiet contemplative time, and that I was going to read the Russians. I'm not kidding you. Right. I was like, well, it'll be my time to just go inside and like, no, you're out of your gourd on drugs. And I was lucky if I could make it through People magazine. And this
Mm,
idea that I was supposed to have like some wisdom, like bubbling up inside of me during that experience is so hilarious to me. Like
yeah.
it took time. It took perspective. It took that wisdom that only is earned through clarity. And when I was just head down trying to make it through to the other side of the chasm, that wasn't the time for me to unpack stuff.
Mm,
Now, I'm not saying it's wrong for somebody else to like wildly document their journey and dive in while they're like, that's great. But if I'm going to be honest about my own experience, that's what's true for me. And if it helps somebody else who is in a similar position and they think that they're not doing it right because they're not having like all of these breakthroughs, no, no, no. Breakthroughs will come, breakthroughs will happen. And it's okay if right now you're just trying to survive. That's all right too.
yeah, it just doesn't come from the clinging or the seeking or the reaching. Like it really comes from the space. And that is such a remarkable reflection to my journey, because coming out of when I was diagnosed, I was in like the most girl boss hustle mentality era, you know, and I just thought, you know, working across 28 magazines at Hearst and thinking that, okay, I'm going to read all these books. I was taking time off from work and thinking that I'm going to like adopt this journaling practice, adopt a meditation practice, do all the things. And I couldn't do a damn thing. And thank goodness for that, because it gave me so much space to receive. Like that space can be so full. That space can be so spacious and so nourishing. And we forget about that. Like we forget, like you can't receive anything. You can't have a breakthrough when you're that full. Right. And I think so many people that are going through a really tough healing journey, you don't have to do all the things. You know, sitting on your living room floor, just taking in the vibrations of whatever music you're playing, that is enough. You are enough just sitting on the couch doing nothing, no thing. And it's like,
Talking with a friend,
yes.
that might be the medicine that you need that day. Other people, maybe they are going to document and make an art project of their experience. I did not. And it has now informed my entire rest of my life.
Mm,
So it doesn't mean like it was a wasted opportunity. Oh, no, no, no. In no way, shape, or form has it been a wasted opportunity. However, I think that I was also very fortunate in that when I was ill, it was before social media
oh,
because I'm that old. So there was no pressure really for me to be like communicating anything about my experience or to be giving people any updates or to be transforming it into bite-sized pieces of information that I needed to push out. I could just take the time to be there and have my experience. And then when I had something to say, I could say it later.
It was a little different for me. I will never forget a friend being like, you should post more about your journey. You should start a YouTube channel.
Sure.
And I was like bald and sitting in my bed. And I was like, I'm just trying to breathe right
Yes.
now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like very grateful for that. Tears would stream down my face when I could have a walk outside.
Yes. Being able to
And
walk
it's
around the block. Wow.
being able to
What?
eat whatever you want, not having your life confined to a chemo calendar. And I was feeling the pressure to be a superstar, like a cancer survivor superstar right out the gate. And it's just, I'm just so glad we're talking about this because I feel like a lot of people going through really challenging times, even with, what's going on with the wars abroad. It's like, yes, everyone can use their voice, but in different ways. You don't have to show up and be this social media activist and this social media star. There are other ways to
I
heal.
I lead this. I began what I call the Decelerate series because I felt this incredible need to slow everything way down. And it's a series of journaling workshops, and it came out of last August. I made a promise to myself. It wasn't a promise. It was more of an exploration. I was going to not rush for the entire month of August, not rush to Pilates, not rush brushing my teeth, not rush whatever I was doing. No conversation would be rushed. And it was a remarkable exploration because I realized how difficult that was for me, right? And I'm supposed to know stuff in this day and age. And I live in a really great set of circumstances that I've created for myself, largely through journaling. And despite all of that, it was really challenging. So I created a slow workshop about the act of slowing down. And in working on it, I realized it wasn't just physically slowing down, it was also the act of liminal spaces, inviting liminal spaces in. And sometimes that means not reacting or responding quickly. And sometimes that means giving yourself the mental gestation time to decide, well, what do I think about that? Not jumping to a conclusion, not stating an opinion that's not fully formed. And that is a remarkably powerful thing. When somebody asks you about something and you say, I don't know what I think about that yet. I'm working on that. I'll get back to you. It is so wild to see the reactions where people are like, what? Again, it's as if we're supposed to be amazing at everything we do and be knowledgeable about everything enough to have a strong opinion about it in like these clickbaity ways. And I don't think that's where wisdom lies.
No,
I don't believe it. No.
I think we're going to experience a renaissance in this yin way of living, this divine feminine way of living. We've been in this like capitalistic masculine way of doing and being for a very long time. And I really believe so deeply that we are going to see the rise of sitting in an empowered state of receiving, and not from a place of not doing anything, but how can you, be so powerfully or like potently present in front of someone that you receive like an unexpected gift from them, like not a physical gift, but like a gem or a download. Like that is in everything, right? If we just slow down,
Yes.
if we just, and again, we forget. And I think some of the most wise people I know say, I don't know a lot. And I'm always very wary of the teachers and the healers that say, I'm a shaman, they have these titles, and I always am a little wary of that guru. It's like each and every person, in my perspective, is a guru in their own way. Each and everything you can learn from each and everything. And it's what you're saying, which I feel like is really powerful. It's like taking that seat of the forever student, which can show up in journaling and creativity and beyond. And I feel like everyone needs to take your course.
I
Every
I I needed to take my course, right? That's
mm,
why I created it. And we talked a little bit about this idea of being forever curious. And
mm,
it's the things that I'm interested in developing and working on, and like, what am I curious about for myself and for my community? And that's where I dive in. I think that idea of like masculine and feminine in us, like, I sure hope you're right. And I know for myself, coming off of the intense capitalistic entrepreneurial in that lifestyle, and shifting into something that was no less no less rich, but lifestyle wise was different. And it's not necessarily men versus women, but this idea of masculine and feminine coming back into balance, and mine were wildly out of balance. I think it's one of the reasons why I got breast cancer.
mm-hmm,
So for me now, trying to embody the stillness of the ovum, like
mm,
talk about righteous knowing,
mm.
and being able to bring more of that energy into my day to day is part of my work.
Yeah, that's beautiful. An embodiment is about the yin and the yang coming together. We all
Yes.
have it within us. It's just we're probably leaning a little too far in the yang, or at least to my entrepreneurs and a lot of people in this community. And I do want to highlight one other tool, which I feel like would be so helpful for a lot of the entrepreneurs out there that are like, their mind is so busy, and it's like, how can you drop into that state of yin, that state of receiving? Is your deck. I feel like that's
Oh,
such
thank you.
a, yeah, I think that's such a great tool for anyone that's going through actually a difficult time and doesn't know where to begin and doesn't know how to, like, have these breakthroughs, but they're like, need it. And it's like, okay, how can I receive? Talk a little bit about your deck.
Yes, the deck was something I created with Dr. Monisha Vasa, who's a psychiatrist. And it was in response to people who said, like, that workshop was great, but could you text me every morning? And I'm like, I would love to text you every morning, but I can't do that. So, and a lot of folks were asking me maybe for an app or something of that case, but the last thing I want is to drive somebody to their phone more. So I created
Mm,
literally a deck of prompts. There are 52 cards. There's a write and draw prompt on each, and they range from really gentle to pretty varsity. And the idea is, shuffle them up, pick one at will, use your intuition to pick them, like, see what's there for you. If you don't like what you picked, pick another one. It's okay. But it's a very low cost barrier way to have some expertise at your ready, but it's a tool for you to interact with and make it your own, so
mm.
that you have 104 different journaling prompts for you right there at the ready.
I love that. I need to start using it more because I feel like I need to shake up my journaling practice as we were talking about yesterday. And I feel like that's such a great tool that'll be helpful to so many. You mentioned something about tech and journaling. I'm interested on your perspective on, yeah, journaling on your phone and just like what role you see technology playing in the future of journaling and creativity with AI. Do you feel like there is going to be a renaissance of analog? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm gonna play my card, which is, I don't know what I think about AI and journaling
Mm.
yet. Okay. Yeah. However, as far as technology goes, I am not anti technology. I think that it would be short sighted and limiting. So if somebody tells me that they use the Notes app on their phone because it's the only way that they're going to journal, I say, great. I would rather
Mm-hmm.
have you use that or your laptop or even voice notes than not do it. There's a new journaling app that's available as part of the new operating system. It breaks my heart
Mm,
that people are conceding more of their personal analog space to a digital medium and spending more time on their phones.
mm,
But if it's a difference between journaling and not, I'd rather have them do it. However, the benefits that I talked about, mental, emotional, physiological, they are actually increased by the act of doing it pen to paper. There are synaptic connections that get made in your brain that happen there where you get the most benefit from doing it that way. And I just feel that given where we are today, how connected we are in all ways, all things. We've seeded our like our menstrual cycle information to our phone, right? There's nothing left to be able to have a place that's just for you without any external noise is such a beautiful gift to give yourself, even if it's just 4 minutes, 4 times a week. So if you're a technology person, that's cool. Experiment, see what works for you. Just like I suggest trying different places, try different mediums, but don't count yourself out because you've got bad handwriting. Don't count yourself out because your hand can't keep up with your brain. Don't count yourself out because you can't even read your handwriting. Who cares? Who cares? Doesn't matter. Maybe you're not meant to reread it. That's okay. So it's a matter of just keeping the door open to the analog at this point. That's my first love. It is how I lead my workshops. It's what I invite people to do, but I'm not precious about it. I want people to journal however that finds them.
Amen. I've been through many different seasons that have many different reasons for my journaling practice. Even voice notes have been really powerful for me when I was going through my cancer healing. And then that kind of moved into a more structured practice, which has now been a more intuitive practice. And I think it's really finding the flow within that form is then the key for me. And I have so many more questions. I think one that I feel like would be really great to touch on as a final question before we dive into Face Off is just cultivating consistency. Like, how can one, you said the 4-day, the four by 4 by 4, but how can one cultivate greater consistency within their practice while still maintaining that gentle energy?
One of the things that I ask people is to identify where they see it fitting into their lives. And different people have different times of day and different moments in their life that are more conducive. And instead of trying to fight your life, work with it. So I had one client who was so dedicated. She was a single working mother, 3 kids, and she was an artist. So the only time that she had to journal was after school drops. She would pull over side of the road, get out her journal, lean against the steering wheel, and write. So I think it's about finding the space that works for you rather than feeling like you have to have the right Instagram moment or that it needs to be like you need to journal like Richard Branson. No, you just need to journal like you. And I think that premise opens up a lot of permission for people. You don't need an adaptogen-laden matcha in order to journal. It's just not necessary. So I that's where I would start for somebody who is like, okay, how do I create more of a consistency? It's like, all right, well, let's look at your life. Where could it fit in? Where do you think it might suit you rather than trying to work from like preconceived notions, because people have a ton of them when it comes to journaling. It's remarkable. They have all of these pictures and stories about the ways that they're supposed to be doing this or what it's supposed to mean. But it's just supposed to fit into your life. And we don't need more self-care stress. We don't need journaling guilt. We do not need that. So like, if you're starting to feel any of that, the journaling expert that I am is telling you officially, you do not need to feel any guilt around this practice whatsoever. That is not helpful.
Yeah, it's when you tune into your life, what works for you is when you're really going to find not only the practices, but that's when you're going to get the downloads, and that's when you're going to find the space to actually like channel and get that wisdom. It's like that's when you're able to tap into your unique power, because No one is living in a life just like you, and we're all trying to fit into these molds. And so thank you for highlighting also not transposing, that hustle mentality onto our healing journey. Like we talked about before, it's really about resacreding the process and being gentle with ourselves.
And Kara, one of the things that you mentioned that was so beautiful is talking about how like your journaling has changed over different seasons of your life. And that's because you listened to what you needed and wanted. And part of why I'm suggesting that people look at their lives and see what works for them is that just the act of doing that and choosing where it works for them is something that we just don't do often enough. And to just like quiet a little bit of room and see, where would this fit in for me? What does it look like for me? The journey is already happening.
You're so right. That power is really in the pause and taking an observer seat of your life. And it sounds very cliche to say that, but I feel like I haven't done that in a while. And you just reminding me of that yesterday. She's like, Laura was like, what do you want your day to actually look like? I'm like, oh my gosh, my life has changed so much in the past 6 months. I haven't thought about that. It's like my schedule and my routines no longer align, and change is so beautiful and welcome. It's like, yeah, it's like uncomfortable at times, but it's like you have to realize that your routines are able to again flow, and sometimes they will go out the window. There are seasons of my life where I was not journaling and I was like, no, that feels good. There are seasons of my
Yeah.
life where I haven't read. It's like that's a part of it. I'm kind of going full circle back to our initial conversation of you got to live your life. Tune into what feels good for you.
Because your life is a creative act. And every single day we're engaged in that. We are making it and then remaking it. And so most of us don't feel like that because we're not awake to it. And that's why I do this work, is to help remind people of that truth and help them come home to that.
It's not just about writing the manifestation list. It's about like living it. I'm a
Yes.
big fan of Deborah Heinkamp and her demanifestation, although I love manifestation as well. But when you're so connected to that seat of awareness, like we're speaking about, and you're like living so intentionally and with such presence throughout your day to day, your life is a co-creation with
Yes.
the greater force. It's
And why always more, 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 more?
right.
Maybe it's about taking a pause, looking around at what you have and appreciating it.
And it's so tough to reprogram that. That's where the real, I feel like, work comes in, which is actually the undoing. It's actually doing no work, not from a seat of complacency, but from a place of creating again the space and reconnecting with the little things that are around you, not the insatiable moreness and the materialism and the capitalistic ways.
Yes.
All right, face off. So these questions are meant to be answered in 2 to 3 sentences. Are you ready?
I am. I should say I'm ready, but not prepared. So let's go for it.
Well, to dovetail off what we were currently talking about, how are you slowing down and resacreding life right now?
I'm spending time with my puppy because she is one of my teachers, and watching how she moves through the world.
I love that. Children and animals, best teachers, actually. And what are you currently doing to learn and grow right now? Anything you're reading or doing?
I generally have a lot of nonfiction that I'm reading. And right now I'm taking a pause and I'm diving back into fiction.
Love that. I feel like it's so necessary. I feel like a lot of the self-care and wellness and spiritual health movement, we're all like learning consistently. Some fiction can be incredibly expansive. What's a recent challenge you faced that you were scared of, but you overcame?
The list is so long. Well, our cancer journeys. I was terrified, and I've been cured 16 years.
It's incredible.
Very lucky.
Amen. Me too. What is one thing you wish people knew about you?
Nothing. Have a conversation with me. I want to learn about you.
Love that. That's confidence and embodiment right there.
Yeah, like what? I don't need anybody to know anything more about me. I want to learn about you.
What can we expect from you growing forward with AllSwell and beyond?
Well, I have a long form editorial project that's in the works that I'm really excited about. And I'm also about to kick off my very first Train the Trainers series of workshops where I'm teaching people based on the 11 years of experience how to do this work and start that knowledge transfer.
Yeah, that's spectacular. I'm super excited for this. What's it called again?
It's called the Superconductor Sessions. The first one sold out with one email and one post. And
And marketing.
yeah, I think it's just something people are really hungry for, and I'm so excited about helping people do this work more in their communities.
It's so beautiful and so necessary. Journaling really is such a simple but powerful tool, as we've talked about. And there's so much more to Laura's work. Where can people find you?
So they can find me on Instagram, and there are two different platforms. There's at AllSwell Creative, and I personally answer every DM. And there's also my individual feed, which is at Laura L. Rubin. And sign up for the newsletter. I give away a ton of IP in every newsletter on purpose. And you can find that at allswellcreative.com.
She has an incredible Substack as well that's full of so much wisdom, but also levity.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you. If you want
amazing.
to dress like me. And that is called Since You Asked.
It's awesome. Thank you so, so much for being here. We're going to have you back. Thank you so much.
It would be my delight and my pleasure. Thank you so much for all of the beautiful work you're doing, Kara.
Thank you. That means so much from you.
Truly.